Hello, you guys, and welcome back to Ambitious. Today, still, if you are watching this on YouTube right now, I am still not at home. So I am at this moment actually staying with one of my girlfriends in Calgary in Canada. And we are heading to a marketing conference this week, going to learn from the likes of Gary Vee, head marketing execs of Pepsi and Barbie and Levi's and all of the different companies, and just very, excited to be able to learn from so many different people. And I definitely will be doing an episode after the conference this week to kind of go over some of the different things that I've learned, some of the different awarenesses that came from the conference, because I feel like I'm just going to have pages and pages of notes. And what better thing, especially if you're, not able to attend these things, or, for me, when I have peers, I'm like, okay, give me all of the goods, give me all of the details of like what you learned, what your awarenesses were, like give it all to me. And so I will definitely be coming back and doing an episode for you guys. On a little bit more on the personal side update, recently had some news that I was going to be having some changes happen in my personal life, and basically had an awareness. I had plans of something that I was kind of hoping to do. And since some of my most recent life changes, thought it was going to go one way, in the sense I thought my life was going to look a certain way for the next little bit. And things have just been, I've been in a season of like really kind of understanding surrender and like really learning aggressively to embrace that perspective and really learn how to embody that at the deepest level. I, have struggled at times, as maybe you have as well, in these moments where things are just not going the way that you had planned. They're not going, at the timeline you had planned, in the way you had planned, the sequence of how you had planned it. And I will be honest, when I had some kind of like recent news of like a plan that I had not going that way and not going to be possible any longer, it felt a little bit overwhelming. I was just like, okay, like I feel like I'm losing control. I feel like this is just like, I didn't feel in the driver's seat. And I realized that one of the best skills I actually have learned in my business is like to adapt and to react and to know how to, do that without it being emotion driving the show. And something that, with this recent news of kind of, needing to move and all kinds of stuff connected to it, it felt overwhelming because I wasn't in control. And then I started to think about, okay, well, like what can I control? And I did learn a phrase from a past mentor of this aspect of like really the motto and the perspective of like bite by bite and piece by piece. And, as kind of my takeaway as we start today's episode, something that I want to just like invite you to is to look at somewhere in your life where you feel like you're trying to fix it all now. You're trying to get it all figured out now. Like we're looking at how we're going to fix all the marketing. We're going to look at how we're going to fix, for me, my entire life in the next X amount of time. And what I realized was like the reason I'm feeling overwhelmed is because I don't have that. I don't have that information. I don't even necessarily have the plan of that, the vision of that just yet. And the motto of the bite by bite or the piece by piece, while it seems really simple, sometimes the simplest things can be the most helpful because they're also the most easy for us to integrate. And the aspect of bite by bite has really been something that's allowed me to say, okay, well, instead of like us looking at, for example, all of the marketing, let's look at the first post. Let's just go live today. Let's just go on our stories today. Let's just send the email. Let's just put up the sales page. Like, let's just get the first piece done on the track toward where we want to be and where we want to end up. And so, even for me in traveling, I got recent news that I had to basically, find somewhere to live. And so originally it felt a little bit overwhelming. And so again, in the aspect of surrender, I basically was like, hey, called in my support system and said like, can you guys help me? Because this is just kind of where we're at. And anyway, long story short, have found a place that I've now secured and will be moving into and, all of that. But it was really overwhelming because I'm just like, I'm literally not home and I'm not at a place where I would need to be to find somewhere, and yet trying to make this happen. And so I also found that when we have these situations, like, or go through painful situations or painful circumstances, I was listening to a video on this past Sunday, and I had heard someone talking about the kind of concept of the fact that when we go through these situations or when we go through painful circumstances, whether that's for you in your business, maybe it's in a relationship right now, Maybe it's with your health. Maybe it's with anything that might be happening in your world, financially, whatever the factor may be. I think, really looking at our perspective of pain. And there was a kind of quote shared that I really just want to share with you before we start today, which was that our pain is our passport to our purpose. And when I heard that, it just hit for me, because when I was listening to this sermon, it was just like, it was in between in all the different messaging. But when I heard it, it just like hit me in my heart. It just downloaded. And it was really just a really simplified way of like looking at painful circumstances for us. It can be overwhelming. It can be the instances where we feel like genuinely hurt by something. We feel like things are not going our way. And what I've realized in this process, and, I've been kind of trying to still unpack it, so it's still a little messy in the sense of the clarity for me. But something that I've realized is that like all of us as entrepreneurs and as individuals, frankly, go through painful situations. All of us are going to experience painful circumstances at some point in the next, month and 6 months and year and 2 years and 10 years. And so the difference is not the absence of pain. Like actually, when you really think about it, a lot of the things that we've gone through that have been painful circumstances for us or difficult circumstances have been the thing that have been the catalyst and have been the pathway toward the thing that we ultimately desire. And so something that I've just really been sitting with recently is this aspect of surrender and the power of surrender, and realizing that what is happening around us is, yes, resistance. There can be things that happen in your life that are resistant, or in your business that are resistant, but it's like, this is the passport to the purpose of you. This is the passport to the purpose of you and your business and what you're meant to do. And even when I think about, resistances I have in my life, this is the passport to the person I'm supposed to become and my ultimate purpose in this world. And the same thing is true in business. Like, this is my passport, this situation in business, this circumstance, this scenario, this problem in whatever department it's in, this pain that I'm experiencing is the passport to the purpose of where I'm supposed to be and where I'm supposed to end up. And so I heard that phrase and it just really resonated with me. And I just wanted to share that with you as a little insight to kind of kick off today. And so to introduce today's topic for you, as you may have seen in the title, something that obviously is that I've been doing business coaching for a couple years now. Okay. I've been doing business coaching for 6+ years. I've worked with all different types of industries. I have worked with all different stages of businesses. And as a result, I will say that there really are key success metrics when it comes to looking at different stages of business, and frankly, like how to quote unquote win when it comes to the different stages of business. And so the intention of today's episode is that we're actually going to be breaking down each of the different levels of business and kind of the categories of how I would recommend that people sort them. And within those categories, the focuses you're going to want to have. And I'm also going to give you some insight as well as to, within my specific business, what were some of the things that I really doubled down on during that stage and that I really focused on to help the business to kind of catapult to the next level. So all of that to be said, let's get into today's episode. So a little bit of the context when we're going into the different stages of business, one of the things that I often echo to clients, and you guys have probably heard me say this on stories, you may have heard me say it on other episodes, is really this aspect of new level, new devil. And that's something we hear a lot. And I mean, I don't love the idea of like new level, new devil as the language, but I do understand the philosophy or the perspective from which it's coming from. And so the way that I look at evolution in business and kind of like expanding your business and scaling your business is that realistically, all businesses experience problems. And so the only thing that really truly is going to change when you're experiencing your business and scaling it to the next level, the biggest aspect of development or adjustment that's going to happen in your business is not actually the absence of problems, because problems are going to persist in your entire business for a very, very long time. It's not about us removing problems as much as growing in your business and scaling in your business is about shifting your perspective in the way in which you experience those problems. And so what I want to break down is really the philosophy of how I want you to look at growth. Because growth, yes, has an aspect, which we're going to get into today, of what your focuses should be per stage of business. So like, what should we at certain stages of the business be looking to master in order to grow to the next level? There is themes in that. But there also is an aspect here of like the problems persist at each stage. One of the things that does change though, and that needs to change, is your perspective from which you perceive those problems. So how do you experience the new problems that come up, but simply change your perception of those problems in order to present different pathways to what it is that you want to achieve and the outcome you're looking to desire. And so I explained to clients, growth is about experiencing the same, if not bigger problems, but simply changing your perspective of them in order to see different pathways to solving them. That is literally all it is. Every business has failed payments. Every business has marketing hurdles. Every business has sales demands. Like all of that still persists in every business. It's just a matter of the CEO and the leader at the head of the table, if you will, is somebody who has the ability to look at those problems, that information presented to them and say, okay, here's how I perceive this data and information, and here's what I think we should do about it, versus the person next to them who may not have either the same skill set, the same mindset, or same tool sets when it comes to business. So the reason I wanted to talk about this is because when you're not aware of what we're going to cover today, and if you aren't aware of the stages, and if you don't know what your focus items should be, there is actually a risk in that. And so one of the risks in that being that if you're not aware of how your business is progressing, i.e. the stage that it's at and what that stage requires of you, what basically ends up happening is that you will stay stuck potentially at your current stage because you may be, and I can't say for sure, but you may be wasting resources or wasting opportunities that are right underneath your nose in your business, because the way in which you're operating your business now is the same as you used to. And it's not really going to move the needle for you because for where you're at, it's not going to help. And so sometimes what we find is when someone's not aware of the different types of stages in a business, they basically use strategies or use approaches that are no longer helpful for where you're at. And so that's number one, risk number one. If you don't know the stages of the business and the focus is at each one of the stages, you may be trying strategies and using approaches or having perspectives that are not really ultimately going to move the needle for you. Now, two is the fact that you actually may not realize that by your business expanding, which is again a good thing, by your business growing, that when your business expands, your capacity as the CEO and as the leader of that business changes. And so what that means is that you need to be aware of how your role as the CEO is going to change when you're in the different stages of the business, i.e., when you're someone looking to hit a 10K month, your role, i.e., where you're leveraged in the business, your capacity that you have to give, the time, the resources, the energy you have, versus that of a $3 million business is very, very different. And so it really is important, in my opinion, that you recognize that not only should the focus of the business change, but also your capacity as the lead of the business also is going to greatly change. And so we need to make sure that you're aware of how your role needs to shift as the business itself shifts as well. The other thing as well, which I also will see, is that you often will see when you're someone who's not privy to, again, the kind of focus items per stage of the business, you may find that your competitors are actually surpassing you. Like you feel like everybody else around you is growing, but you're not growing and you can't seem to figure out why. There are times when this happens, when someone kind of gets stuck in the way that they've always done things and they really don't look to adapt. They don't look to adjust or kind of change the way that they approach their business. And that's typically because they don't have an awareness. And so one of the things, there's a model that I could have you Google if you want to kind of take your notes on your phone out. If you're driving, you're good. Come back to this and pause it. But there's actually a model that I would love for you to look up, which is the stages of competence. And the stages of competence was a model that I was taught in coaching that was immensely helpful for me. And it basically talks about the different levels of awareness. And these levels of awareness are something that's really important for you as a business owner to understand. Because when you understand the levels of awareness, you're able to really give yourself, frankly, the permission slip for not knowing, but also give yourself the understanding of what's needed for you to be able to develop. And so the reason I wanted to use this as an episode today is, this is something obviously that I do a lot as work with clients, but something that I really look at as to why I constantly talk about this topic and why I want people to be educated on it is not from a place of shame, by the way. It's okay if you don't know these things. This is why you're listening to this. And congrats, you're looking to develop yourself and you're looking to get this awareness and this understanding. But when you go into, and the reason I'm saying when you don't know it, I'm trying to tell you because I really want to emphasize the importance of awareness in your business. when you're unaware of things in your business, and you'll see this within the model, when you're unaware of things in your business, you're basically not conscious at what you're not good at. And so what it means is that the things you're not consciously aware that you're not good at, so basically you're not consciously aware that you're not good. You're not aware that you're lacking a skill. That's a big gap in business, because it means that you may have areas right now in your business that if you had an awareness of them, you could adjust. And so the goal of Ambitious to me is to give you guys the strategies, yes, and to give you, listening, literally the blueprint of what you need to go kick ass in your business. Like, I want you to come here every week and be like, yes, go, 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 and just like go kick ass. That's what literally the goal of what I hope to translate to you through YouTube or through your headphones right now. But the thing that is the main also intention for me is that I share my awareness with you. I want you to have the awareness that I have in business, so that just the way I forecast other businesses and help them with their strategy, you can also forecast your own strategy in your own business, and you can take that and run with it. And frankly, knowing you and the way you operate, take over the world. So all that to say, let's get into the different stages. And I'm going to be breaking down these stages by how much they're making per year. And obviously I'll correlate that to per month, because typically in the online world, we often hear income based off of the per month number. So the first stage one, is going to be the 0 to 40K a year. So for a reference point, this is for anybody who's basically making $0 a month in their business up to 3K a month. So during this stage of your business, stage one, you're basically going to be, looking at how can I just do the most amount of things. So this is kind of what we consider to be almost like the buffet approach. You are just machine gunning strategy, literally left, right, and center, because you don't necessarily have a rhyme or a reason to what you're doing just yet. You're going in trying to just be like, I'm going to try as many things as I possibly can. I'm going to, try Instagram, and then I might do Pinterest, and I might do TikTok, and then I'm going to do like a masterclass, but then I'm going to do a coaching offer, and then I'm going to do this agency thing, and then maybe I'll do a retreat, and then I'll host a conference. Like, you're literally trying to do anything and everything, because you're really just, you frankly have nothing to lose. Like, you're literally just hustling your butt off. And I know, because I remember the stage vividly, you're hustling your butt off, trying to try as many things as you possibly can, because that's the way that you're ultimately going to learn, is through the doing. And so really the main thing that we're looking to remove at this stage is to really minimize the pressure we feel. So I remember at this stage, like, making my first couple sales, I felt so much pressure to like figure it out. Like, I just felt like I felt lost. I felt like a fish out of water. Like, I felt like I just like didn't know what I was doing. I was kind of like trying other people's strategies, trying different approaches. Nothing really felt like it like fit me, kind of thing, in the sense of like that it really worked for me. And I also was like, very frankly, if I'm going to be really transparent with you, I was extremely driven and motivated to be able to go full time in my business. And so I really wanted to push as hard as I could to try to find a way to get this to be consistent. And so for me, the biggest thing that most people struggle with when they're from the 0 to 3K a month stage is not having clarity. Like, the main thing they need clarity on is like how to have clear daily habits to operate as a business owner, planning and understanding like the 101 of what they need to do in business at a very, very simple level, and then understanding marketing and how to speak to the person they're trying to solve the problem for. Because when it comes to this stage, there's so much information out there, which is really the downside, right? At stage of this specific stage of business, when there's so much information out there, you don't know what's right or wrong, which is why the buffet approach ends up working, or end up being the reality, frankly, is because you just don't even know what's right or wrong. So you just try everything. And so you end up lost, feeling like I have no clarity, I don't know what to do. And so my emphasis for you is, if you're at this stage, or if you know someone at this stage, the recommendation is for you to really focus on clarity and keeping the business simple. The main thing you need to emphasize when you're wanting to make those consistent sales is to really look at like having basic understanding of how you can get in front of people who don't know you exist, who you can speak very clearly to the problems that you solve, and making sure that they're aware of them. And then also looking at like, how can I start to build a personal brand, start to get people aware of like the problems that I solve and how I can support them. And with that as well, looking at like, how can I really focus on one product? And I'll give you guys an acronym that I tell people. When someone is really in the earlier stages of their business, this is my recommendation. One platform that you market on, one process for which you convert clients. So if it's like DMs, phone calls, whatever it might be, one product, i.e., like one core way in which you serve them, and specifically one promise, which is the fact of like, what is the one thing that you're going to help people to achieve as an outcome? And if you, generally speaking, have those types of clarity, you already will have what you need to start to see the wheels turn when it comes to your business. And so one of the things that I also want to normalize at this stage of 0 to 3K is the fact that, you really also will have quite a few of your clients come from referrals, and that's totally okay. Initially, when you start an online business, one of the first things that's going to happen is you're going to leverage your existing current network, like the things that are already around you in this given moment. And so one of the things that I saw was like, for example, like my first business was a fitness business. And so my first clients were literally people that I went to high school with, or the people I went to high school with, friends who ended up hiring me. And so it's also very normal when you're first starting to have a lot of people that you're kind of getting through word of mouth, because you don't necessarily at this time have enough of a brand or like a base built yet when it comes to marketing to be able to convert people based off of that. And so this would really be like the stage one of recognizing that like it's the initial building phase. It's a lot about clarity. And frankly, it's a lot about consistency. None of what we're talking about today will work unless you're also wildly consistent. Stage two is really where we look at those who are making about 40K to 100K a year. So for a reference point for you, this is for anybody who's making on the low end $3,000 a month up to the high end of $8,000 a month in this bracket. In this bracket, you still oftentimes may be part-time in your business, which is totally normal. I think there's a very like glamorized, marketing, if you will, when it comes to the online world of the idea of like, leave your 9 to 5 and like, just like lean all into the business. And I actually think that that's a mistake, because I think when people leave their job too early, what ends up happening is you end up, when you leave your job too early, what ends up happening is you have so much pressure of the financial of like literally existing that you literally feel like you can't move, because every move is like a big domino effect for you, because it has to work, because you have no other way to live or to make your income. And so I really do, will say the biggest thing that we see with this is that most people are typically still part-time in their business, which is totally okay. The other thing that I will often hear at this stage is kind of like this aspect of like, what do I need to do? Like, what's the issue? Like what's basically the sticking point of why I'm not growing? There's usually this resistance at the stage of like, I want to grow faster. I want to grow easier. And so the biggest issue that most people have is actually a lot of clarity around who they're serving. Because again, initially, remember, to stage one, you're getting a lot of referrals. You're getting a lot of people who are coming to you through your network. And so when you start to then go into where the 6 figures a year and you're trying to connect with people outside of your network, you really are going to experience very quickly whether you know your ideal client or not. And so if you don't know your ideal client, then it's really going to present itself at this stage to you. And so that's something that I will say definitely comes up when it comes to the stage of like around the 6 figures or less in your business. And another big emphasis I will say is that people really lack understanding how to communicate at the stage, like what they do in their sales process. So like when you're on calls with people or when you're in the DMs with people, they typically at this stage really struggle to effectively really articulate, what is it that I do? And what is the problem that I solve? And like, how do I help people? That doesn't always feel crystal clear to people. And so because of that, they really struggle to get sales past this, because they struggle to communicate what they're trying to say to people. So here's what I would say at this stage in the sense of focus. I think that there is a very big emphasis when it comes to marketing and sales. It needs to be about a very streamlined sales process. And there needs to be a ton of emphasis on lead generation. Because again, like when you're looking at like a 3 to 5, 7K a month business, you may not have like inbound inquiries rolling in day out. And so you really, like, if I could put it candidly, have to hustle to get those initial inquiries coming in and start to build up that base of people who are interested in working with you. And so at that stage, that's normal. Like you really need to prove a process of how you're going to consistently convert people. And with this as well, you're also likely at this stage typically going to be seeing, when it comes to like a product suite side of things, how things are working. And so like from a, kind of a storytelling standpoint for me, to give you some context. So in stage one of my business, when I first came into the business space specifically, I really actually played quite a bit in the sales bucket. And I had so many people in my world who were struggling with sales. I'm like, great, I'm going to make a sales program. And so when I made the sales program, I realized that, I really loved coaching women, but I didn't only want to focus on sales. And so that's actually when I leaned entirely into private coaching and had kind of considered like, okay, well, what does that look like if I want to make other offers? And so during this time, the sense of what I focused on, again, remembering that the stage is the 3 to 8K a month, I was, from a marketing perspective, doing a ton of brand building. So basically my emphasis was like getting in the weeds with my audience. I was going live. I was doing, like ask me anythings. I was making freebies for them. Like I was doing so much just to serve, which I still do to this day. Like obviously you guys know that I give away a lot of tips on the podcast. But the thing is, for me, like I was doing it in a more manual way. And what I mean by that is like in the weeds day to day with the audience. And so that was something that I really emphasized to really help to build that like, no trust with the people in my world. And when it comes to the sales process, when I was talking about keeping it simple, it really is about, in my opinion, during that stage, I was doing tons of sales calls. Like I was really putting in the reps and mastering the ability to get someone on the phone, and from getting them on the phone, being able to convert them from that point onward. And so that was something that I really emphasized, because I was like, if I can ensure that when I get an inquiry, I can go like, step 1, 2, 3 kind of thing and get that person into a sale, that gives me some aspect of like what we consider to be rinse and repeat. When you hear people talk about rinse and repeating for marketing and sales, rinse and repeating is really because people are wanting to find like a kind of like a system of how they do things, and they really want the ability to be able to rely on it. And so for me, during that stage, I heavily focused on looking at how I could just literally get consistency. So sales calls were like kind of my core thing I sunk my teeth into. So really for me, it was brand consistency, getting in the weeds with my clients at this time. It was giving tons of free value content, starting to dabble into private coaching and looking at different ways that I could solve problems for people outside of sales. And then also doing quite a bit of sales calls to kind of really create my rinse and repeat lead generation process. So again, remembering that we've got stage 1, which is the person who's making 0 to 3K a month. We've done stage 2, which is 3K a month to 8K a month. And now we go to stage 3. So stage 3 is for those who are making about 100K to 300K a year. And that's typically going to be for people who are doing around anywhere between low end 8K a month up to 25K a month. So by this time, because usually you are making on the low end 6 figures, if not more, again, going up to $300,000 a year, you're likely full-time in the business, or you should be at this point. And so really the question that most people have here is trying to get out of this aspect of like survival mode, right? Like we feel like we're making sales. Maybe it's like the sales calls are doing really well for you, where you've got like an application process or proposal process, and you're seeing leads come in, like you're seeing sales happen, but you're also kind of trying to ask yourself, well, like, how do I get ahead? Like, how do I step into the next phase and not feel like I'm in this kind of like fight or flight or this like survival mode basically within my business? And so the biggest thing that most people struggle at this time is really to increase the lead generation. So like when you have that way that you used to convert, 1 or 2 or 5 people, how do we take that now and make that something that we can really crank up the volume on to dial in and dial up at more leads and basically like turn up the pipeline, if you will, to get more sales coming in here. And so what's really needed at this time in this stage of business is much more an aspect of like, how do I generate consistent leads from marketing? And then 2, how do I rely on like converting those people consistently at scale? Like there really isn't a lot of other things at this stage needed necessarily, other than the main emphasis on really turning up the pipeline when it comes to lead generation. So I want to give you some strategy cues of what I typically would recommend to someone at this stage. So again, this is if you're somebody who's at about 8K a month to 25K a month. Number 1, you're going to be looking to really widen your audience. Again, exposure, getting more people in the pipeline. And you're going to also want to look at how can we engage them quicker, easier, faster in the audiences that you're already part of. So like if you have an Instagram, if you have a TikTok, how are we leveraging that? How are we getting success with that? But then also, how can we get exposure to new audiences to get you in front of people who don't know that you exist yet? The other thing as well is going to be the brand building. One of the things that I really emphasized in the multiple 6-figure bracket is really building my brand and getting super clear on, who I was and what did I believe and, what did I stand for on the internet, and really how to create that kind of momentum and community and connection around a shared vision and not just, posting information basically, and being a resource for info and education. I also will say at this stage, there's quite a bit of diversifying a product suite. So, typically this bracket is quite a bit of who I work with inside of my IT Accelerator Mastermind. When I'm in my mastermind, quite a bit of the women inside are usually making about anywhere between 5 to 8, 10K a month And the goal is to get you up to 30K a month kind of thing in the duration of the program. And so one of the ways in which we do that is we really look at people's product suite. We look at like, is this strategic? Is this creating an intentional customer journey for people? Are we getting good delivery, creating renewals, referrals, all of basically the back end retention we want to see within the offers as well. And we really look at building out the customer journey so it's super intentional for anyone coming into your world. And it also has the ability to have longevity, that it's not something that's kind of like a one-hit wonder, if you will, in the sense of the fact that it's not just like a quick offer. We want this to be something that has longevity as you scale. And the other thing that I would also say is that at this stage as well, again, remembering 8K a month to 25K a month, we're starting to introduce more automated sales processes. So what I mean by that is, it's less of, you in the weeds necessarily. And it's more a matter of maybe we're going to introduce DM selling, or maybe we introduce a passive offer. Maybe we introduce, a course or something like that. We're starting to look at different avenues and more variety of ways in which you can generate sales within the business. And so that would be something that during this phase, we're going to be really accentuating. So for myself, kind of going back to branding, for myself, a little story of kind of like my side around this, I really focused with branding as well on the curation of my branding. I really got super clear on what brand archetype I was, and looking at like branding wise, not just brand as in values, but branding wise, like what was my branding and how was I going to showcase that consistently online. I also played a lot with looking into how I could start to really flesh out my product suite during the stage around, adding in things like my VIP days and my ITI foundations and my ITI Accelerator Mastermind, which we've had for years now. Like, these are all structures that got added as a byproduct of me wanting to expand the product suite and to really kind of step into diversifying the ways in which I was able to generate a sale. And sales wise, as I said, we started actually selling in DMs. We started doing sales calls. We added triage calls, which were like a stage before the sales call, to, again, even more systematize and kind of automate and structure our sales process. And so like with all of the things, literally each of the areas, there's quite a bit of aspect here of refinement, of creating consistency at scale, but then also looking at the ways in which we can use systems, automation, and diversifying. There's a little bit, almost a theme I want you to think with the stage of those who are 8 to 25K a month can really be for those looking, really the word I think about is diversify. Like, diversify your marketing, diversify your offers, diversify your sales processes. Like, this is really where we start to be able to go a little bit wider in the way we do business. So it's not so siloed back to like stage number 1, where we're thinking like, the one person, the one process. We're not at that anymore at the stage. This is an opportunity for you to be able to really look at the different ways that you can leverage the market in your favor. And so to the next stage that I want to also break down for you, the next stage is for those who are making about 300K a year to 1 million. And so this is really where you're going to be making, on average at the stage, 25K a month up to 83K a month. So on that, $1 million run rate, as most people like to call it. So during this phase, honestly, the biggest thing that I would say is going to be the feeling in your body is that you're going to be working overtime. I am not going to lie to you. Hitting 7 figures is, for some people, yes, like on marketing and social media, like I just woke up and I was a millionaire. Bless your heart if that is how it all went down. But for me and many of the clients that I serve, if we get in a room and we really start talking about it, they will be very honest and open and transparent with you that that is not how it went down. They worked a lot of hours. They busted their butt to be able to hit the 7-figure mark. And so the way in which they did that was really by putting in the reps to get things set up. And most of the things that we're needing to get set up at that time were quite a bit of systems and processes around the things that were their strengths. One of the things that is important when you're looking to build a 7-figure business is to basically take what you know and find ways to really streamline that, systematize it, automate it, so that it's being able to be done faster, easier, and in a more productive way by somebody else on your team. Or if it is by you, even in, again, a shorter time frame, so you have more time to do the things that are most important. When you're in the bracket of, call it like 300K to $1 million a year, the thing that's also going to start to become part of your reality, or it should be at that point, if that's your goal, is that you really need to start looking at marketing less from like a kind of more personal interpretation of like, I like this post or I like this launch, and more from a lens of actual data. And, the data, when I say data, I feel like, it's not a sexy word, if we're going to be honest. Data is not something sexy to most people, but it is something for me that I'm like, it's like it gives you the understanding of what you need in your business, right? Like when we started pulling marketing data and really leaning into sales data and understanding the sales pipeline and how to assess it and all those things, yes, it doesn't sound sexy to most people, but it's kind of like the equivalent to getting your blood work done, right? Like when you get your blood work done and you have someone who can actually communicate to you why you feel the way you feel. Like if you're feeling tired, here's why. If you're having stomach issues, here's why. The same thing is true in your business. Your business right now, as you listen to this, probably has symptoms of things that it's experiencing. We're experiencing, client refunds, or we're experiencing lack of inquiries. We're experiencing whatever the symptom is. There is data. There is a quote unquote blood work that can be done in your business at any department at any moment that will tell you what's going on and what the issue is. And in my opinion, most people don't dive enough or care enough to kind of learn data. And because of that, it makes them always feel like they don't know what's going on when really the information's in front of you if you were just tracking it. So that would be something that I would say is also really important at this stage. Also really establishing authority. I think from a brand perspective, obviously we talk a lot in the earlier stages of business about building your initial authority. But I think the main thing that we're really looking at on a deeper level here is when you're in the 7-figure bucket, you'll see 7-figure business owners, they've got real depth of community. Like they have those like die-hard fans, those people who would like ride or die for them. And the way that you do that is by community and connection and engagement and depth with the people in your world. And so I think that that's a really important piece of this stage, is not looking at it anymore of just kind of like a post and pray or just like putting up a ton of posts. It's really a matter of like, how do I build like genuine connections? Like this is not about just like engagement and having a post do well, but like, how do I make my people feel seen? Like, how do I make my people feel connected? And for me, it was really like thinking audience focused. And like, even with, obviously my business has surpassed 7 figures now, we're into multiple 7 now, but it's, when we started to get into that phase, like I was like, I just want this to be about you, like you who's listening to this right now. And thank you for listening. This isn't about me. Like this is about you. Like none of who I am or what I have or what I do would be possible without you and your support. And so I think it's really acknowledging that when you are having and desiring to create bigger impact and to have a bigger domino of your impact in the business world or in your space, like your people are the way that you do that. Like I don't have any impact without you who's listening to this. I have none. Like you are my actual impact. Like you're the way that this message and the women who need to be served by this, and women changing the stat of, 2% of female founded businesses hit 7 figures, like you're the reason. And so I think it's important when we're really looking to build like a big, big business to recognize like this is not about us anymore. It's not about me as a CEO or me as the leader. It's about looking at the community and the we type of perspective and saying like really that it's a group project at this point, not just me. And also I think product suite, it's interesting because you'll note product suite before this, when we were going again, thinking back to the 30K a month, now that we're at the 30K a month and we're going to 1 million, it's actually about product suite refinement. And this is something that I see as a mistake actually, because when people are trying to go to 7 figures, they initially, when they're at like 30K, they've been making all these offers. And so they're like, okay, like more. But the creating of the offers at a certain point has to stop. Like you can't just make more. Because if you do, what you're actually doing is you're filling your plate with tons of stuff, tons of things to manage, tons of things to create that are ultimately taking away from the overall, intention of what's meant to really serve the business and to streamline it. And so I also think it's really important when we look at product suite during this time, it's focusing on customer feedback and looking at like, what is the feedback of the people going in? And so during this phase, what we did is we actually had offboarding calls with every single person in our program. We had, a call that would basically like finish their time with us and would kind of like close off their container. As part of that, I would ask a series of questions. I basically had this form that we made, and I would literally hop on the calls and say, hey, I'm going to ask you a couple questions. I want you to just be like brutally honest with me. Tell me what you're thinking. Tell me what you're feeling, and let's go into it. And like that feedback really helped me. It literally helped to shape the way in which we curate and structure our programs. And so I think that, the customer is always right is really when I started to embrace that mindset, was actually during like the 30K a month to going up to say like 80 or 90K a month. Like that was really where I was doubling down on like, okay, so now I know that I have these core offers. I want to refine the delivery of them. I want to make sure that people are getting even better results. I want to make sure that the program is really centered on them and what they want and the experience they're looking for. Like I was really super customer audience focused. And also the thing, again, kind of back to data, which again is not necessarily a sexy thing, but it does make a big, big difference at this stage. and for those wanting to hit 7 figures, is like understanding how many clients did you get this year that came from referrals? How many clients this year came from renewals? Or how many sales came from renewals? How many inbound inquiries are you getting? How many people are you getting on a call? How many people on the call are going and booking through? Like these pieces, when you play at a bigger number, let's just say you have a 7-figure business and again, you're making, 85K, 83K a month. When you're making 80 grand a month, there's more domino. Every single lack of sales can have a domino decreasing in the number. So like, let's just say, for example, we're not looking at data. We might not realize that we're spending X amount on our team when we should really only be spending this percentage kind of thing, right? So like, it does matter. Like this is where there's a divide, because some people look at their business as kind of like, oh, I don't need to know that. I don't care. I just kind of collect money and like, it doesn't really matter. I'm speaking, as I talk about this, by the way, to somebody who wants to build like a real business, a real company, something that like you would feel proud to sit at a table with a bunch of other business owners and talk about. Like this is something that you feel confident to stand behind. And so I think the way to do that is by having a real aspect of eyes on your business. So we focused a lot on our data, our automations, our client management systems, our onboarding systems. We've just got really, really robust back end that gives us visibility in all these things. So it's not being done manually and that it's not taking a lot for us to manage it. But it also was this time as well, from a marketing perspective, we started to kind of introduce in our business a little bit more advanced marketing strategies. So looking at, how we could have consistent Black Friday promotions and how we could have consistent launches and what were all the things that we could start to integrate that really allowed the whole business throughout the entire year to be rinse and repeat, not just the day-to-day sales process. And so we started to integrate promotions. We started to really add, like, again, more width to the business in the sense of adding more variety to things. And we also would, look at not only delegating to systems and processes, but also delegating to people and looking at like, how can somebody on my team support me in doing this to help to take it to the next stage and make it go even further. And so the last stage that we're going to go into and the last phase of the business stages is what we consider to be the $1 million a year up to the $3 million a year mark, which means you're making on average $83,000 a month up to $250,000 a month. And so the biggest thing during this stage is delegation. You have to, it's just all team. And at a certain point in your business, the perspective is no longer how do I do it? It's how do I teach someone to do it? And it's something this is a divide. Like someone going from $1 million a year to going to 2 and 3 is really a matter of the CEO getting out of the way and realizing that their responsibility now is manager and leader and not the doer. They're not the ones who's going to be in the weeds anymore. Like they are not the person who's going to be executing that. And that's not their role or like their leverage basically within the business any longer. And so it really is about team communication, systems, delegation, and looking at how you can build up your team to really be the powerhouse and the machine behind the business. And so, I also want to lean on some other areas too, of areas of focus. So number one as well, I would say for us, which was a huge piece of it, also was looking at like multi-platform traffic. So looking at like, how can we, have, for example, the introduction of YouTube. And obviously we've now in the last year or so added podcast, which was another extension of this, right? Like we've looked at, all the different ways that we can basically have a touch base with our ideal client. And in that, we really try to focus on brand, building and brand exposure and really just like getting in front of more people by using different platforms to do it. And also leaning a little bit more into kind of like what I would consider to almost be like leadership content. And leadership content meaning like this was a way for me to focus on the brand development. I've been doing a lot more speaking. This is more like, last year and the year before was a lot of like going to conferences and being on stages and doing, podcasts. Again, one of the little hacks I'll give you. You don't want to start your own podcast? I would actually recommend going on other people's podcasts. And when you go on their podcast, actually, if you look up Kate Perkovic on Spotify, you'll literally see a playlist of all the other episodes where I've been a guest. And so if someone wants to search my name, they'll see all the other people that I've gone on their show with. And so like, again, that's a way, just a little hack for you. If you don't want to create a podcast of your own, you can pitch yourself to be on other people's podcasts. And then from there, go on and basically tell your story and then leverage those social clips for more exposure for you. But it really was looking at how we can just build out. The big emphasis, I would say, was team. There was quite a bit of team, and looking at, team values and team vision and mission and, the principles from which we operate from and the roles we have in the team and who's responsible for what. And, shifting from people being very task centric toward outcome centric, like all of that is a very, very big emphasis at that stage. And so when you're somebody who, for example, is, at the 1 million to 3 million, the biggest emphasis I would say to you is really a matter of delegate to systems and delegate to people. But people and team are like the most important of all of it, because it really is like your people are the path to the growth you're looking for. Like no longer at 1 million to 3 million a year is this really you. Like you're not the bottleneck unless you're not getting out of the way. You're not as much the bottleneck as much as it's more a matter of like, are you empowering and supporting and coaching and leading your team to be able to do the things that you want to have happen. And so really when you're looking to scale, it's about the back end side, which again, may not be sexy to some people, but like it's your leadership skills, it's your management skills, it's your ability to motivate and your ability to hold people accountable in management. It's your ability to lead. It's your ability to hire and fire. It's to provide feedback to team members and to really have systems and structures that are created to support them and not just you. Like there's just so many things that go into making it bigger than you. And I think that the cap that leads a lot of businesses to stay stuck is the fact when you're looking to go from 1 million to 3 million a year, you have to drop the ego and you have to realize this is not your vision anymore. This is not just about where you want to go and what you want to do and how you want it to look. This is a group project now. And so it means that your entire team needs to be on the same page with you. And they're the people that are going to support you in achieving that. And so pouring into them is like the number one way to be able to see that growth happen. So just to kind of go over the high level of all the stages for yourself, stage 1 is going to be 0 to 40K a year, which is people who are 0 to 3K a month. Stage 2, we're making about 40K to 100K a year, or better known as 3K a month to 8K a month. Then we're going to go into stage 3, which is where they're making 100K a year to 300K a year, or 8K a month to 25K a month. You've got also your 300K to 1 million, which is 30K a month to 83K a month. And we've obviously got our last stage, which we just discussed, which was where you're making 1 million to 3 million a year, and you are doing 83 a month to 250K a month. So I really want to break down these different stages for you so that you can really start to see the themes of what the emphasis is, where your energy should lie, where you're going to move the needle. And, it's my hope in you learning these stages that you're really able to start to identify, like, where am I? What should be my focus during this time? What are the things that I'm kind of struggling with right now? And kind of using this as an opportunity for you to assess, like, what am I working on? And where is something where maybe I need to be pouring more energy or moving the needle a little bit more than I am. And so all of this to say, I obviously want you guys to know, as always, my DMs are always open if you guys do need any feedback on some clarity, some awarenesses you have listening to today's episode. I also want you guys to know that, as I said in the earlier part of today's episode, Ambitious is very much a podcast that was completely designed and created for you. And so if there is anything that I can talk about, share, a guest you'd love to have on, a overall topic that you'd love to have covered, please be sure to reach out to myself on Instagram, just literally at Kate Perkovic. My DMs are always open. Shoot me a voice note, shoot me a message. It means the world to me to be able to touch base with you guys and to be able to chat with you about, what kind of resonated with you on the show. I'm always loving feedback on anything that kind of hits home for you. And also what doesn't is also very much something that I desire to hear as well. But also if there's topics that would really support you. I think, my goal for Ambitious has always been that for ambitious women just like yourself, that you can tune in every Thursday and feel like you got your bucket filled. Like you were able to be like, okay, like let's freaking go. And that you feel one step closer to that goal that you're going for right now. And so if there is anything that I can do through Ambitious to support you in doing that, I am absolutely all ears and happy to do it. So all that to be said, you guys, thank you so much for listening. And I will see you on next week's episode. And until then, as always, stay ambitious.